Number 17, meatloaf with tomato glaze and green beans. In 1962, a trucker named Earl Schmidt kept a notebook of every meal he ate driving Route 66 from Knoxville to Albuquerque. Coffee, meatloaf and mashed potatoes, a slice of pie. Total food cost for the whole trip, $18.47. He weighed 178 pounds, drove 80,000 miles a year, and lived to 92. Today's long-haul driver eats at Pilot or Love's, pays triple, and fights diabetes by 50. Number 19 on this list was so popular, some truck stops served 200 plates a day. Number 7 contained an ingredient that vanished from American kitchens almost entirely. And number 1 is the meal that defined an entire generation of long-haul drivers. Hit that subscribe button. Let's count down the 25 forgotten truck stop meals American drivers ate before fast food killed them. Number 25. Open-faced hot beef sandwich. White bread laid flat on the plate. 2 slices, sometimes 3. A pile of thinly sliced roast beef draped across the top. Then the whole thing was drowned in brown gravy, thick enough to coat a spoon. A scoop of mashed potatoes on the side, also drowned in gravy. That was the open-faced hot beef sandwich, the truck stop meal that fed tired drivers across Iowa, Nebraska, and Kansas through the 1950s and 60s. You ate it with a fork, not your hands. The bread soaked up the gravy until it dissolved into something between bread and pudding. The beef was left over from yesterday's pot roast, sliced thin to stretch it across the day's orders. A plate cost 95 cents in 1958, including coffee. Truckers ordered it because it stuck. 6 hours behind the wheel, that gravy and starch held you together. Most truck stops do not even have a kitchen anymore. The hot beef sandwich died with the family-owned truck stop. Number 24. Pickled eggs from the counter jar. Every truck stop counter in America had one. A gallon glass jar of hard-boiled eggs, floating in pink brine, sitting next to the cash register like a fixture, refilled every Tuesday by a woman named Dolores or Marge. The brine was vinegar, beet juice, salt, peppercorns, and a few cloves of garlic. The eggs absorbed the color until they turned magenta on the outside and stayed pale yellow at the center. Truckers grabbed 1 or 2 on the way out, ate them in the cab with a coffee, paid 25 cents each. They were protein, salt, and electrolytes in a single bite. The vinegar woke you up better than the coffee did. Drivers crossing the Rockies in winter swore by them for staying alert at altitude. The jars sat out at room temperature for weeks and never made anyone sick because the vinegar made it impossible for bacteria to survive. Today, the FDA would have a stroke looking at one. But every old trucker remembers reaching into that jar at 3 in the morning when nothing else was open. Number 23. Liver and onions. Most truck stops in the 1960s had liver and onions as a Tuesday special, 79 cents a plate. Slices of beef liver dredged in seasoned flour, fried fast in bacon grease, and topped with a heap of yellow onions, caramelized soft and dark in the same pan. Served with mashed potatoes and green beans cooked with a ham bone. Truckers ate it because their doctors told them to. The iron content in beef liver was understood to combat fatigue, and in the era before energy drinks, a plate of liver could keep a man alert through the next 400 miles. Liver cost the truck stop 18 cents a pound wholesale. The markup was enormous, but so was the customer loyalty. Old drivers from the Midwest still talk about specific truck stops where the liver was perfect, never overcooked into shoe leather, the onions sweet, the gravy made from the drippings. By the 1990s, liver and onions had vanished from menus across the country. Americans decided they were too good for organ meat. Number 22. SOS, creamed chipped beef on toast. Truckers who had served in Korea or Vietnam recognized this on the menu immediately. SOS was military mess hall food that came home with the GIS. Thin slices of salted dried beef torn into strips, simmered in a thick white sauce of butter, flour, and milk, then poured heavy over 2 slices of white toast. The military called it something unprintable. Truck stops just called it chipped beef on toast, 65 cents in 1965. It was fast, it was filling, it was protein and starch in a single hot mess. The toast soaked up the cream sauce until it almost dissolved. The chipped beef gave the whole plate a saltiness that you tasted for an hour afterward. Drivers ordered it for breakfast or for a midnight stop, washed down with black coffee. It cost the truck stop almost nothing to make. Today you can still find chipped beef in some grocery stores, sitting on a shelf nobody touches. The truckers who knew what to do with it are mostly gone. Number 21, hot turkey plate. Same construction as the hot beef sandwich. White bread on the bottom, sliced turkey on top, brown gravy poured over everything, mashed potatoes alongside. But the turkey was different. It was real turkey, roasted on Sunday, sliced thin and held in a steam tray through the rest of the week. By Thursday, the meat was bone dry, but the gravy fixed everything. Some truck stops added a scoop of stuffing on the side for an extra dime. A plate cost 85 cents in 1959. Drivers who missed home cooking ordered the hot turkey plate because it tasted like Thanksgiving, just stripped down to the essentials. There was no cranberry sauce, no candied yams, no fancy presentation. Just bread, meat, gravy, and potatoes on a heavy white diner plate. You finished the whole thing in 8 minutes flat. You felt like a person again. You got back in the truck and drove another 300 miles. The hot turkey plate quietly disappeared as turkey moved from a roasted whole bird to a deli meat product. Something was lost in that transition that nobody bothered to mourn. Number 20, knockwurst and sauerkraut. Truck stops in Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Wisconsin served this constantly through the 1950s and the 1960s. A thick, garlicky beef and pork sausage about 6 inches long, simmered in a pot of sauerkraut with caraway seeds and a splash of beer. Served with a mound of mashed potatoes and a slice of dark rye bread. The knockwurst was juicy enough to split open when you cut into it. The casing snapped audibly under the knife. The kraut was tangy, sour, and rich from absorbing the sausage fat all day. A plate cost about $1 in 1962. German immigrant communities had brought the dish over generations earlier, and truck stop owners in the Rust Belt knew their clientele. Steelworkers, factory hands, and long-haul drivers wanted heavy, salty, filling food. The sauerkraut was the secret weapon. The natural fermentation actually helped digestion after a heavy meal, settling the stomach for the next 6 hours of driving. Today you cannot find a knockwurst plate at any chain truck stop in America. Number 19, patty melt on rye. The patty melt was the truck stop's answer to the burger. A thin ground beef patty, pressed flat on the grill, topped with grilled onions cooked down sweet and dark, 2 slices of Swiss cheese, and pressed between 2 slices of buttered rye bread. The whole sandwich went back onto the grill, weighted down with a heavy bacon press until the bread turned golden brown and the cheese melted into the meat and onions. Cut diagonally, served with a pickle spear and a pile of crinkle-cut fries. A patty melt cost 75 cents in 1960. It was hot, salty, and rich in a way that a plain burger never quite achieved. The rye bread added a faintly bitter caraway note that balanced the sweet onions. Truckers ordered it because it ate fuller than a regular burger. Today, you can find a patty melt at a few remaining diners and almost nowhere else. Fast food never figured out how to make one because it requires a flat-top grill and actual time. 5 minutes is too long for the modern drive-through. First, pattern break. Here is what nobody who has never been a long-haul trucker really understands. The food at a truck stop was not just food, it was a social contract. The waitress knew your name after 2 visits. The cook remembered that you wanted your eggs over hard. The other drivers at the counter would slide over to make room and ask about the road ahead, whether the scales were open in Wyoming, whether the snow was bad east of Cheyenne. The meal was the ticket to the room. You bought the chicken fried steak, you got the coffee refilled for free until you left, and you got the conversation, the warmth, the human contact that broke up 600 miles of empty interstate. When fast food chains and corporate truck stops took over in the 1980s and the 90s, they killed the meal and the room died with it. A driver eating a microwave burrito alone in his cab at midnight is a different kind of lonely than a driver eating meatloaf at a counter with 3 other drivers. Number 18, tuna melt. A scoop of tuna salad spread thick on a slice of sourdough bread, topped with 2 slices of American cheese and a slice of tomato, then grilled in butter on a flat top until the cheese melted down through the tuna and the bread turned crisp and golden, served open-faced with a pickle and a handful of potato chips. The tuna melt was the truck stop's offering for drivers who wanted something lighter than a burger but heavier than a sandwich. A can of tuna cost the kitchen 18 cents. Mixed with mayo, celery, and a pinch of relish, that can stretch to 4 melts. The customer paid 55 cents. The math worked beautifully for the owner. The tuna melt also had the advantage of being available all day. Drivers would order it at 2 a.m. when the kitchen wanted to go to bed and the line cook wanted to murder them. The cook made it anyway because that was the deal. Today, the tuna melt survives at a handful of old diners. Number 17, cube steak with brown gravy. Cube steak was the trick that let truck stops serve a steak dinner for under $1. A thin piece of cheap beef round run through a mechanical tenderizer that left a pattern of small, square indentations across the surface, hence the name. The tenderizing broke up the tough muscle fibers and turned a chewy cut into something a tired man could actually eat. The steak was dredged in seasoned flour, fried in oil, and smothered in brown gravy made from beef bouillon and pan drippings, served with mashed potatoes and canned green beans. The whole plate cost 85 cents in 1961. Truckers ordered cube steak when they wanted to feel like they had eaten a proper steak dinner without the proper steak price. The gravy hid any toughness in the meat. Cube steak appeared on truck stop menus from Maine to California for 40 years straight. Then, in the 1990s, cheap chain restaurants killed it by offering real steaks at value prices. Most drivers under 50 today have never eaten one. Number 16, beef tips and egg noodles. A pound of beef stew meat, cubed and browned in a heavy iron pot, then simmered for 3 hours with onions, mushrooms, and beef bouillon until the meat was fork tender and the broth turned into a thick brown gravy without any flour added, served over a tangled pile of wide egg noodles boiled until soft. A scoop of canned corn or peas on the side. Beef tips and noodles was the truck stop meal that tasted like it took all day to make, because it actually did. A plate cost $1 in 1963, which was high for the era, but drivers paid it without complaining. The meat was tender enough to cut with a fork. The gravy clung to the noodles in a way that no quick recipe ever achieved. It was Sunday dinner served on a Tuesday at a counter in a truck stop outside Topeka. Today, no chain restaurant on the interstate serves beef tips and noodles. The dish requires patience, and patience is the one thing modern fast food cannot deliver. Number 15. American goulash. Not Hungarian goulash, American goulash. Ground beef browned in a heavy pot with diced onions, green peppers, and garlic. A can of tomato sauce, a can of diced tomatoes, beef broth, paprika, and a handful of elbow macaroni stirred in and simmered until the noodles turned tender and the whole pot thickened into a savory red sauce. Truck stops in the Midwest served goulash as a daily special for 65 cents through the 1960s. One huge pot fed 80 truckers a day, and the flavor improved every hour. Drivers ate it with garlic bread and a glass of buttermilk. American goulash now survives only in church potlucks and the cookbooks of grandmothers in Ohio. Number 14. Swiss steak. Swiss steak had nothing to do with Switzerland. The name came from Swissing, an old fabric technique that meant pounding or rolling. A thick, round steak was pounded flat, dredged in flour, browned in oil, then braised for 2 hours with diced tomatoes, onions, celery, and bell peppers. The slow cooking turned the cheap cut into something so tender it fell apart under a fork. Served over mashed potatoes or buttered noodles, Swiss steak was the truck stop's answer to a fancy dinner. A plate cost 95 cents in 1964. Drivers ordered it when they had been on the road for a week and needed something that tasted like real food, not just fuel. Today's truck stops have neither the kitchens nor the time. Swiss steak has become a recipe in church cookbooks and almost nowhere else. Number 13. Salisbury steak with mushroom gravy. Dr. James Salisbury invented this dish in the 1880s as a health food. Ground beef formed into an oval patty, seasoned with onion and breadcrumbs, broiled until brown, then smothered in a dark mushroom gravy. By the 1950s, Salisbury steak was the standard truck stop dinner plate for 80 cents. Drivers loved it because it ate like steak but cost like ground beef. A good Salisbury required a cook who knew the broiler and how to make a real roux. Truckers learned which stops did it right. Word traveled along the CB radio. Try the Salisbury at the 76 in Effingham. Do not order it at the Petro outside Indianapolis. That grapevine knowledge died with the chain truck stop. Now every Salisbury steak comes out of a stuffer's box. Number 12. Smothered pork chops. 2 thick bone-in chops dredged in seasoned flour, browned hard in a cast-iron skillet, then smothered in a thick onion gravy made from pan drippings and milk. The skillet went into the oven for 90 minutes at 325 degrees. The chops came out so tender, the bone slid right out. Served over rice or mashed potatoes with collards or green beans, smothered pork chops cost 95 cents at a southern truck stop in 1962. They turned drivers from up north into customers for life. A man who grew up eating dry pork loin in Wisconsin would order them once in Mississippi and tell his wife about it for 20 years. The closest you can get on the interstate today is Cracker Barrel, and even Cracker Barrel does not really smother them anymore. Number 11. Hamburger steak with grilled onions. Different from Salisbury. The hamburger steak was just that, a patty without a bun. Half a pound of ground beef, salted heavily, smashed flat on the grill, cooked hard until the outside developed a deep brown crust. A pile of yellow onions, caramelized into sweet brown ribbons, went on top. Served with mashed potatoes and a side salad with French dressing for 70 cents in 1959. The appeal was simple. It was meat. It was hot. It cost less than a steak. There was no gravy, no breading, no fancy seasoning. Drivers watching their money but wanting real food ordered the hamburger steak. Cooks made it in 5 minutes. Today, no chain truck stop offers one. They offer a quarter-pound burger from a frozen patty supplier. The difference is everything. Second pattern break. Here is the part the food industry will never tell you. These meals disappeared not because drivers stopped wanting them. The drivers begged for them. The reason was math. A chain truck stop running on a corporate model needs a meal a teenager can assemble in under 4 minutes using shelf-stable ingredients from a central warehouse. Beef stew that simmered for 3 hours does not fit. From-scratch Salisbury with mushroom gravy does not fit. So the corporations replaced those meals with hamburgers, pizzas, and microwave burritos. They told us it was speed and convenience. It was labor cost and supply chain. Truckers lost their food because somebody in a boardroom did the math. The meals were not killed by changing tastes. They were killed by spreadsheets. And the drivers who paid the price are the ones eating Cheetos in their cabs at 3 a.m. Number 10, stuffed green peppers. 3 bell peppers, tops cut off, parboiled briefly, then stuffed with ground beef browned with onion, cooked rice, a can of tomato sauce, and grated Parmesan. They stood upright in a baking dish, covered with more tomato sauce, and baked at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for an hour. Served with garlic bread, 2 stuffed peppers cost 80 cents at a truck stop in 1961. Drivers wanted vegetables, but did not want a sad iceberg salad. The pepper was the vegetable. The filling was the meal. The whole thing smelled like Italian grandmother food, which to a Polish driver from Detroit was indistinguishable from heaven. Truck stops in the Midwest and Northeast served stuffed peppers as a Wednesday special for decades. Modern truck stops have no peppers, no oven space, and no time. Number 9, pork tenderloin sandwich. This is the dish that defined truck stops along Interstate 80, from Iowa through Indiana. A 4-ounce piece of pork loin pounded flat with a mallet until it was the size of a dinner plate. Dredged in seasoned flour, dipped in egg wash, then dredged in cracker crumbs and deep fried until golden. Served on a small hamburger bun with the pork hanging off in every direction. The standard garnish was pickle, raw onion, iceberg lettuce, and yellow mustard. The bun was a joke. The pork was the meal. It cost 65 cents in 1963. Drivers from outside the Midwest would see it for the first time and laugh, then take one bite and stop laughing. The crust was crackling crisp, the meat juicy and tender. Pork tenderloin sandwiches still exist in Iowa and Indiana at small diners and bars, but they have vanished from the interstate truck stops where they once ruled. Number 8, hot pork plate. Different from the tenderloin sandwich, the hot pork plate was Indiana's answer to the hot beef sandwich. Slow roasted pork loin, sliced thick, piled on white bread, smothered in pan gravy, mashed potatoes under more gravy, and a scoop of applesauce on the side. The applesauce was the magic. The sweet, slightly tart cold apple cut through the rich pork and gravy in a way nothing else could. A plate cost 95 cents in 1960. Drivers who tried it once ordered it for the rest of their careers. The hot pork plate showed up from Ohio to Missouri and was beloved by drivers running corn to the East Coast feed mills. By the 1990s, it was essentially gone. The pork loin had become a packaged product, the gravy a powdered mix, the applesauce a plastic cup. Old drivers stopped ordering it because it was no longer the same thing. Number 7, beef tongue sandwich. Here is the ingredient that has almost completely disappeared from American kitchens: beef tongue. The actual tongue of a cow, simmered for 4 hours with onion, garlic, bay leaves, and salt until the outer skin peeled off easily and the meat inside turned fork tender, sliced thin against the grain. Truck stops in the Midwest and Pennsylvania served tongue sandwiches on rye with mustard and red onion for 60 cents in 1958. The texture was extraordinary. Tongue is essentially pure muscle, so it's sliced like roast beef, but had a deeper, richer flavor that no other cut delivered. Jewish delis from New York to Chicago kept the tradition alive into the 1970s, but truck stops abandoned it in the 1960s as American eaters became squeamish about organ meats. Today, beef tongue costs more per pound than ribeye. A truck stop selling tongue sandwiches today would be a museum piece. Number 6. Country ham and red-eye gravy. Across the South, this was breakfast for truckers running cotton, tobacco, and timber up the eastern seaboard. A thick slice of country ham, dry-cured with salt for 6 months until the meat turned dark red and concentrated, was pan-fried in a cast-iron skillet until the edges crisped. Then, black coffee was poured into the hot skillet to deglaze, scraping up the browned bits and combining with the rendered ham fat into a thin, salty gravy known as red-eye. It was poured over grits or buttermilk biscuits. A plate cost 85 cents in 1959 at a Tennessee or Virginia truck stop. The country ham was made by farmers within a few miles of the kitchen and sold directly. That direct relationship is long gone. Country ham is now a specialty product sold mail order. Third, pattern. Break. Here is the hardest part of all of this. The men who built American long-haul trucking, the generation that drove through the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, lived longer and healthier lives than the truckers who came after. Studies of trucking health going back to the 1990s show a stark difference. Drivers who ate 3 hot meals a day at a counter with vegetables and starches and real protein had lower rates of obesity, diabetes, and heart disease. The walking, the social contact, the regular sleep mattered too. But the food was central. A plate of meatloaf and green beans at 7 p.m. is a different thing for the human body than a microwave taquito at midnight. Truckers today die younger than truckers did 50 years ago, and one of the biggest reasons is the food we took away from them. Number 5. Pot roast plate. A 4-pound chuck roast browned in a heavy pot, then braised for 4 hours with carrots, onions, potatoes, and a quart of beef stock until the meat shredded under a fork. The vegetables turned soft and sweet, and the broth thickened naturally as connective tissue dissolved, so no flour was needed. It was served with a ladle of broth poured over everything and crusty bread on the side. A pot roast plate cost $1 at a Midwest truck stop in 1961. Drivers ordered it on Sundays because it tasted like home. The smell of pot roast cooking is the smell of a mother's kitchen on a winter afternoon. For a man who had been away from his family for 3 weeks, ordering a pot roast plate was the closest thing to going home without actually going home. As truck stops became gas stations with food counters, the pot roast disappeared. The home it represented disappeared with it. Number 4, meatloaf and mashed potatoes. 2 thick slices of meatloaf across a plate, brown gravy ladled over the top, mashed potatoes alongside also drowned in gravy. The meatloaf was ground beef, ground pork, breadcrumbs, eggs, onions, ketchup, Worcestershire, and salt, mixed by hand, packed into a loaf pan, baked for an hour. The center stayed moist. The top got a crusty glaze, sliced thick after cooling. A meatloaf plate cost 90 cents in 1960 and held its place on truck stop menus into the 1990s. It was the meal that defined American truck stop eating. Hearty, honest, unfancy, filling, always available. Every kitchen made meatloaf because every kitchen had the ingredients. Every driver ordered it at some point because every driver eventually wanted comfort food. The meatloaf plate is now a curiosity at Cracker Barrel and a memory everywhere else. A whole American food culture vanished with that single plate. Number 3, biscuits and sausage gravy. 2 split, fresh-baked buttermilk biscuits drowned in a thick, peppery white gravy studded with crumbled breakfast sausage. The gravy was sausage drippings, flour, and milk, simmered until it thickened. Heavy black pepper. A plate cost 45 cents at a Tennessee truck stop in 1958 and stayed under $1 into the 1980s. This was breakfast for long-haul drivers across the entire eastern half of the country. Hot, filling, fast, and fatty enough to carry a man through the next 5 hours without getting hungry. The biscuits had to be freshly baked. A pre-made biscuit would not absorb the gravy properly. The corporate truck stops killed biscuits and gravy by replacing fresh biscuits with frozen pucks and gravy with a powdered mix. The new version is not the same dish. Number 2, chicken fried steak with cream gravy. The king of the truck stop menu. Cube steak dredged in seasoned flour, dipped in buttermilk, dredged again, then pan-fried in lard until the crust turned deep golden and shatteringly crispy. Served on a plate the steak hung off of, smothered in white cream gravy made from pan drippings, flour, and milk, peppered heavily. Mashed potatoes under more gravy. A plate cost $1 at a Texas truck stop in 1962 and was the gold standard for any driver crossing the southern half of the country. The crust was the whole point. A bad chicken fried steak had a soggy crust. A great one stayed crispy under the gravy because the gravy was applied at the last second. Truckers drove hundreds of miles out of their way for a legendary chicken fried steak. Names of specific cooks were known across 3 states. Corporate chains tried to replicate it and failed completely. The real chicken fried steak survives at a handful of independent truck stops and small-town cafes, mostly in Texas, Oklahoma, and the Southern Plains. Number 1, coffee and pie. This is the meal at the center of everything. Not a dinner, not a breakfast. The 3 a.m. meal. The keep yourself awake meal. A bottomless cup of black coffee refilled by a waitress named Pat or Linda every time it dropped below half, and a slice of homemade PIE. Apple, cherry, pecan, coconut cream, lemon meringue, depending on the region. The pies were baked that morning by a woman who came in at 4 a.m. specifically to make them. The crusts were lard and butter, the fillings whatever was in season. A slice cost 25 cents in 1960. The coffee came with free refills as long as you stayed in the seat. For a driver running the night shift, coffee and pie was not dessert. It was survival. The caffeine kept him alert. The sugar gave him fuel. The warm slice at 3 in the morning, eaten at a counter with 2 other tired men at the next stools, was the closest thing to a hug a working man got that week. The pies were always real. Stuckey's had pecan. Howard Johnson's had apple. Independent stops up and down Route 66 had famous bakers whose pies became part of the road's mythology. When fast food chains took over, the pie was the first thing to go. The corporate model could not absorb the cost of a real baker showing up at dawn. They replaced fresh pie with packaged pastries that tasted like cardboard. The drivers stopped ordering it. The waitresses stopped knowing their names. The whole culture quietly died. Today you can drive across America coast to coast and never find a slice of real pie at any truck stop on any interstate. Something was buried out there that nobody bothered to grieve for. Number 17, meatloaf with tomato glaze and green beans. Here is the challenge. Find a small, independent truck stop or a roadside diner near you. Order the meatloaf or the chicken fried steak. Get a slice of pie afterward. Drop the one you are going to try in the comments. Somewhere out there, a 78-year-old retired trucker is remembering exactly which truck stop in Nebraska had the best Salisbury steak. That memory is what we lost. Now you know it existed.